Just at some point, just text them to me or pictures or something. Whatever is fine. Actually, a text would be better if I'm like rambling or doing an ad or something. During the BetUS ad's fine. So, all right, Harlan, you're good. Welcome to Double Fries No Slaw Wednesday night, 7 p.m. We are here to talk a little bit about this Duke game that happens on a Friday night, which I'm actually a huge fan of.
Yes.
Double Fries No Slaw brought to you by Guthrie's, powered by BetUS. Appreciate them for their support. We'll talk about Roback here in a minute as well. But Richie, I like the Friday night thing. I'll tell you, like good year, bad year, it doesn't matter. I like it being out of the way. I'm not to the point where losses have zero effect on me. It's a very minor effect. And so it doesn't like sit with me for like 4 days like it used to, but it's certainly like a couple of hours sits with me. And so to get it out of my system, to do whatever like recap we'll do, win or loss on Friday night, it'll be done. I'll wake up Saturday morning, I'll have issues. I'll have to watch kids. Whatever. I'll have a lot of things going on, and then I can just enjoy football. So I love the Friday night stuff.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, and a lot of Florida State fans, in the past always thought we were above weeknight games on a Thursday or a Friday, which Friday's been pretty rare, but we played a lot of Thursday games. It was typically one a year, almost always on the road, which I was fine with because, to your point, Saturday is a stress-free day because if you lost Thursday or Friday night, you're over it by then at that point. And if you won, you're just more excited to watch college football and see which big games we have going on that week. I do not mind weeknight games at all. Now, if they start putting us, on Maction Tuesdays, which we're going down that road, it might seem, then it might be an issue. But yeah, I have absolutely zero qualms with playing on a Friday night, especially when it's a road game. And that's the one thing. Say what you want about the ACC. Obviously, we are still trying to get out, but for the most part, outside of BC. I forget how many years ago, it was on Veterans Day. They never take a home Saturday game away from us. It's always on the road, which I'm okay with.
Yeah, I do remember, that BC game. So that was 2016. If I had to, no, 2016 would have been an even year, so it would have been up there. So it had to be 2015. That one was weird. I don't know why that was on a Friday night, but on the way home, I went to South Carolina, Florida.
It was 2017 because 2015 I was on a bachelor party and I went to the game in Boston, which was also on a Thursday night, I think. So it had to be 2017.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's weird. It's weird that it would be 17 would have. I lied. 17. It had to be 16 because 17. I know we're going to spend half the show doing this, but the odd years were up there because 13 we were up there in BC. So 14 had to be because that was with the Hail Mary so it had to be like 16 or something. Yeah, 16 sounds about right.
Yeah, 16 or 18.
So, frustrating. Okay, so in general, I like it a lot more this year, but I do think it is kind of disrespectful to put your premier brand on a Thursday or Friday night. Not to get so far into that, not to like this isn't my like cuss out the ACC normal podcast, but like it's a little like. I will like they would never, and that's the ACC is a second tier conference, so it makes sense. Yeah. Ohio State never plays on Thursday or Friday nights. They did one time against Virginia Tech because it was at Tech. Alabama doesn't play on Thursday or Friday nights, right? Florida doesn't play on like Florida did when they played at Utah because again the Pac-12 lower, or So anyway, I don't like it in general because I do think it's a little disrespectful to the brand. Like Florida State, Clemson should not be playing on a Thursday or Friday night. I'm not even say Miami. But the old person in me and the person that just like wants to avoid being scarred on Saturdays is okay with it. So this year I'm okay with it. We've played a lot of when you think about it, we played a lot of we played 3 games not on Saturdays this year. When you think about, 2 games not on Saturdays. And then obviously the week 0 game. So really we only had 9 Saturdays here in the fall. Maybe that was a blessing. Double Fries No Slaw brought to you by Guthrie's. You can visit all 3 of their locations, 1818 West Tennessee Street, 2550 North Monroe, and 2870 Appalachie Parkway. Make sure that if you're in Tallahassee or really anywhere with the Guthrie's, you are stopping by and you are telling them you heard about them from us, and you're getting your gut box Double Fries No Slaw. Richie, we talked a little bit. We early previewed the Duke game. I ranted about the sod, whether or not that should be a thing or not. I've heard some different takes. I've heard some interesting takes on that. Everybody has a different take. the one thing everyone agrees on is that it's disrespectful that
Yes.
Florida State's an underdog. Not necessarily by Vegas. Vegas is just setting a line that they want even money on both sides. It's disrespectful that this program is in a position to be. I don't care what Vegas does or not. They just want money. Like, that doesn't bother me. It's almost disrespectful. It's a travesty that Florida State even is an underdog to Duke. I still stand by the fact that Duke is fake good. Just looking at some of their stats that I looked up for tonight, I don't think they're very good, but they've won their games. I'd much rather be a fake good 5-1 than a actually bad 1-5. But I haven't come off my take. I still don't think we should bring the sod back, but I'm okay. Like, obviously Norvell didn't come out and say that. I asked a couple people like, "Hey, you want to ask about this in the press conference?" And everybody was like, "No, I'm not asking it." And I was like, "All right, whatever." I would have, but you do what you do, you honey boo boo, right? So I haven't come off that take, but I'm hoping. I'm hoping we win, but I'm hoping I don't see any sod dug up there. I did ask Jake Crane about it. I don't know if you ever watch Crane and Company. He does a great job on the for the Daily Wire. He said that we should just tell recruits that have to walk by the sod cemetery that was actually a basketball game, that we pulled the sod out. Like, we won a basketball game and we buried part of Coach K's court there in the sod cemetery. And I said, that's a good compromise. Just lie to the recruits and say it was basketball. So big picture thoughts before we play Duke?
Yeah, again, I'm a traditionalist, so I'm fine with it being a sod game, and it would be pretty depressing if our next home game we have a new tombstone and you have blue and white flowers over it that says Florida State beat Duke 16-13 in an unranked matchup. That would definitely tarnish the sod cemetery a little bit, but it's been tradition since Bobby was here. I'm not sure if it was before Bobby, but I'm okay with it. But it is embarrassing that you're looking at a sod game, and I haven't looked at the most recent line today. Been pretty busy, but yeah, it definitely is embarrassing if we do have to plant a tombstone for Duke, a team who you are 21-0 against all time. You've never lost to them. Something Miami cannot say. That
Something Clemson can't say.
Yeah, Clemson can't say that. It is.
I don't think Florida can say that. I think Florida's lost to Duke.
Yeah.
Duke, football.
No, Steve Spurrier probably beat Florida when he was at Duke. It's embarrassing to think about that. But at the same time, I'm all for tradition, and I'm not going to walk back my stance from our last show. I still do think if Vegas says so, this should be a sod game, in my opinion.
Yeah, Florida 3-2 all time against Duke.
Almost 500.
Even if we lose, we've only lost half the games that UF has ever lost to them. So
yeah,
I should have probably said that live. Now somebody's going to steal my troll because they'll get it off faster than I will on.
I'll be the one to steal it. Don't worry.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask Lindsay to cut the internet out there. All right. So I want to talk about this, and then we'll talk about Duke, and maybe not be on here a super, super long time tonight. But if you're watching this, thanks for tuning in with us. I anticipated that we wouldn't, this wouldn't be the most exciting preview when you're 1-5 coming off a bye week and playing a team like Duke. But appreciate, those that are here with us hanging out and those that will watch or listen on the replay on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you can find podcasts or here on YouTube. Richie, there's been a lot of talk about, and this, was something that I was kind of told early in the week against Clemson, and I was kind of told this is not something you can put behind Patreon. This is not something you can tell anyone, but Luke is going to play this week. And the person that told me that was like, I will know if you said anything, so don't say anything. Started leaking out on Saturday morning. I started getting texts like, hey, have you heard this? And I just kind of played dumb and said nope, haven't. That's interesting, whatever. And then I saw some people that would know before the game, and they came by the tailgate and we talked, and I was told the same thing and thought Luke was going to play in that game. I think Mike's plan was to play Luke. That's been, reported now by 247 and other places. That didn't end up being the way that it went. Luke didn't end up getting in the game. I thought Brock played well. And my thought was, right, I'll try and put myself in Mike Norvell's shoes. My thought was that Mike probably thought the game would not be super competitive and probably thought, hey, I'm going to get the young kids some reps too. I'm going to have him play in this game some too. Sounds like the plan was maybe to put him in after the fourth or on the fourth drive. Brock threw a interception on the third drive, and so I think Mike didn't want to just pull him right after. Just optically, that would look bad. I understand that from Mike's perspective. Not wanting to be, one pick and you're out. What would that do to his confidence? What would that do to the fan base? Thinking like, oh, wow, that was a short leash. And then Brock led a touchdown drive on that fourth drive too. And so at that point, then do you pull him out right after a touchdown drive? Like, it was just a weird place for Mike to be. I would assume Mike didn't think that Brock would have the success he did. Not because Mike doubted him, but Mike doubted him all year and wouldn't put him in. So yeah, I mean, maybe it was because he doubted him. All that said, never ended up playing Luke. And 247 reported, and I've heard some things too, that the Croman camp was not thrilled that they were told that he was going to play and then not play, which I very much understand. And I think I do think things have been smoothed over now. I don't think there's, Luke's not jumping in the portal tomorrow or anything like that. So I'll calm people down. I think that it's an interesting dynamic to, one, see if Luke plays this weekend. Two, maybe just another miscalculation by Mike. Like, why would you either have to play the kid or don't tell him he's going to play. I understand things happen to change in games, and I'm not a Mike basher. I get it. But, like, you shouldn't have told the kid that he was going to play to where then that starts to leak to other people through the week. And obviously it came out and was reported on Saturday morning. Like, we kind of think we might see both of them. Either you have to just kind of bite the bullet and put him in at some point, or don't make a guarantee to him that he's going to play in the game. Because, man, in this day and age of the transfer portal and the way that Brock looked, like, it would surprise me if both quarterbacks were on the roster when we get to January 1st. And just both guys are going to want to play next year, I think. And so it just seemed like a bit of a miscalculation by Mike to, one, either not play him, or two, just don't tell him that he's definitely going to go in. So anyway, thoughts around that?
Yeah, I would bet a lot of money that one of those two, Brock or Luke, will be gone by January of next year, or by December of this year, quite frankly. When you have two quarterbacks this close in the, which class they are in, and both believe they should be starting, they believe they should be QB1, and if they don't feel they will be, they're going to believe they can be QB1 at another Power 5 school, most likely. This is not a Tate Rodemaker situation where, he knew he wasn't going to be a QB1 at a Power 4 school, so he just went where he had to go. This is a situation where you have two quarterbacks who are both very, very highly recruited by elite schools, like by the likes of Ohio State and Georgia. They both, the patience runs thin these days, and I hate that. We would love to be in the Charlie Ward and even the E.J. Manuel days where they were content being a redshirt junior before they actually started games. But those days are long gone. And I do think if Mike did tell Luke in his camp that he was going to get some action last week and he didn't, that was a huge unforced error on his part. Just massive, quite frankly. And now, does he put himself in a position where, he feels obligated to get Luke in the game this week? Well, what if Brock comes out and he finds a rhythm early? Do you get into a Graham Mertz, DJ Lagway situation before Mertz got hurt to where you're going back and forth, or a Drew Weatherford, Xavier Lee back from my time in college situation where you're just trying to keep everybody happy? Bobby Bowden used to say, if you have two quarterbacks, you don't have one quarterback. And I do think that truly is the case. So if Brock comes out and he does find himself in a rhythm early and the offense is moving the ball and things are going well, okay, are you just going to try and find a drive to just shove Luke in there? And what happens if he throws an interception? What happens if he leads a phenomenal drive? You're just inventing more problems for yourself as a head coach, as a play caller, as the offensive mind of the team. That's what I worry about. I think Brock is the most likely person to be the future next year. You need to stick with him throughout. But yeah, it was a huge misstep if Mike told Luke in his camp that, hey, we're going to get you in the game this week against Clemson. And he didn't, just because of how the way things are playing. That's a massive issue. And that would be ultimately on Mike for, really miscalculating things.
I also think when you look at Lee and Weatherford and you look at Tebow and Leak and you look at Lagway and Mertz, and those guys were such different skill sets that you can kind of get away with it with that, right? Like a mobile guy or a bruiser and a pocket guy. Not that Luke or Brock are just like strictly pocket guys. I think they both, move well enough. But when you just have two guys that are essentially like, I don't want to say the same guy. Like I'm not just trying, they're all the same. But like they're kind of the same type of quarterback. Like I don't know that you need to, like with Lagway, at least you introduce his legs. He's a phenomenal, like he is a phenomenal talent. And I don't, it's an unforced error. You didn't have to tell him like, hey, you're playing in this game
situation. Yeah.
Yeah. You didn't need to, and again, with the flow of the game, I'm not necessarily saying that it would have been easy for Mike to put it in, but the easiest thing to do would have been to not make promises that you can't cash. Like that would have been the easy thing to do. Hey man, if the situation presents itself, we'll try and get you some a series or two. We'll try and get you in the game. We'll see how the game goes. But yeah, like and at this point, so I will tell you this: I don't care about the red shirt at all. Like if Luke's good enough, he ain't gonna be here for 5 years, right? Like either he's good enough and only gonna play here for 3 or 4, or he's not good enough, he's gonna transfer out, or Mike's gonna get fired, he's gonna transfer out. Like whatever. Like to me, it would be shocking if the red shirt mattered at all. So that part I don't care about at all. Quarterbacks, wide receivers, cornerbacks now, I don't really care about red shirts. Offensive linemen, defensive linemen, I kind of do more. But I don't care about the red shirt one bit at all. Like if Luke's our quarterback in, what would that be? 5, 6, 7, 8. 20, if Luke's our quarterback in 2028, we've passed Oregon in the NIL category to like keep him from going to the NFL. Right? Like that's just not realistic. So I don't care about the red shirt, but I do. Again, Brock, and at this point, Brock has shown you, now more film is on him. Maybe it's easier for other defenses, but Brock has shown you against the best defense you're going to see for the rest of the year that he can get it done. And so if he struggles in any game, you're going to put, and I want to see Luke. Like, don't get me wrong, as a fan, I want to see what you got. But are you going to take Brock out? Like a guy who's already shown you, like in the biggest moment, against a quality Clemson team that he can get it done, you're going to take him out? Now, he throws 3 picks in the first half against Duke. I'm sure Luke will start the second half. Like, I have no, but like, if he's playing well, man, it just, again, this staff and Mike Norvell, I've said this staff before, and people have yelled at me for saying, it's Mike's fault, it's not the staff's fault. Okay, well, yeah, Mike can wear this. Mike, Tony, Alex, whoever kind of makes the decisions at the end of the day on who's going to be on the field on offense, it just felt like they flubbed that. And again, I'm not super concerned right now about, I don't think Luke's about to, I feel pretty good about where things sit right now. And so that's not really my concern. My concern is just like, man, do we read the room well for anything? And I like Mike. This is not firing Mike over a QB decision, but like we really struggle to do anything well. And again, if you're going to tell a kid that like, hey, you're going in on this drive, it was supposed to be the 4th drive, just put him in on the 4th drive. Like, just do it. And I get it. There was a pick the one before, and Brock did well on the 4th drive. But if you're going to do it, like, people, when you tell, Brock was frustrated that he didn't get in against Memphis. I think a team that I think he had family in town and thought that he would maybe get a chance if things didn't go super well. DJ wasn't playing super well in that game. I think Luke had, obviously, I know Luke's family was there. And, when you tell a kid, like, hey, you're going to get in, you're going to play against Clemson and inside of Doak Campbell Stadium for an 8 p.m. kickoff, more people show up, more family comes in, like that's how it works. You could tell my daughter she was playing a softball game, I would go. Like, that's just how that works. Like, so yeah, again, I don't know what Mike does from here, right? I would stick with Brock until he started to struggle. I would maybe, if they can win this, because I think what's going to happen, they're going to go out and play Duke this week, and if they get a big lead or down by a lot, then maybe you go to Luke. Next week, you'll probably have some opportunities to play Luke. I'd love to, not to get too far into a Miami thought train, but you'll probably have some opportunities next week against Miami to put Luke in. You'll probably have some opportunities against Notre Dame to put Luke in. You'll probably have some opportunities against Charleston Southern on the other side of the coin to put Luke in. So I think Luke will get some reps. But I don't know that I would necessarily play him this weekend if Brock's playing fairly well. Anyway. So yeah, I don't know. Just hopefully we can, make better decisions, follow through on promises or guarantees or whatever we're telling kids, because I don't know, that was a little mind blowing to hear before and after the game. And if I was Luke, I'd be upset too. I'm just being very real. Like I'd be pissed. So
Yeah, and if you're Vegas, Florida State has to be one of the hardest teams in the country to handicap right now because there is a lot of talent there. It just clearly has not come together. Like if you were to ask, a Kalen DeBoer or a Steve Sarkisian or a Ryan Day, hey, pick a roster that you want to coach, whether it be Florida State or Duke's, they're going to pick Florida State's every single time. But the product on the field, 1-5 is 1-5. This is a results oriented business, and Florida State has not produced. So it's just so impossible. Like, I'm not betting on another Florida State game the rest of the year, outside maybe a bet with some of my Miami or Florida buddies that doesn't involve a bookie, just because we do that every year. But it's just insane when you look at Florida State on paper. And I know we've had a lot of season-ending injuries, and a lot of guys out, and things just have not worked out the way we thought they would. But man, it's just baffling how a team that on paper could be this talented, if I had to guess, and I don't know this for a fact, at the very worst, top 15 payroll in college football when it comes to NIL, and you're 1-5. It just makes no sense to me, TJ.
So the other thing I'll say as we maybe talk about this and then get into the Duke game is it is encouraging to me. Now, some of this by necessity, some of it just because I think Mike thinks it gives them a little bit better chance to perform. They have gone to a little bit more youth. I mean, obviously Brock was one you had to do because DJ's hurt. A couple of freshmen or a couple of younger guys starting at guard between Early and Otto, which the guard play at Florida State this year has not been great. Actually, Richie Ferguson did an okay job, but they haven't been very good at guard. And obviously, Ferguson, Jones, others like just whether it be from injury or just not playing super well, like that's not been very good. And then your outsides of Byers and Washington, Smith in the middle. Hopefully Smith has kind of a bounce back game. Interested to see some of the youth out there. Hakeem Williams listed as a starting wide receiver. Kentron and Darion kind of pushed down the depth chart a little bit. I think that's encouraging. Hopefully you see Jaylen Brown play more. I guess if he takes one snap, he'll play more than he did last game, which still haven't really figured out what happened there. It was not injury related, I've been told. Not sure why he didn't play, but and then in the back, KJ Kirkland playing over Hussey seems like a good decision. It does seem like more of a youth movement. We'll see, what you get out of that. I think, within a youth movement, you're going to get more mistakes, but you're also going to find out more about what the future holds. So I don't know how much of that Mike wanted to do or how much he just feels like his hand is forced. Well, Hussey's not injured. So yeah, that's just one where I think they feel like they got a better chance with Kirkland back there than Conrad. But I am interested to see the young guys as those reps continue to increase over the next, 6 weeks, 7 weeks with the bye. Because I do think that's we've been calling for a youth movement since BC. I do think that's kind of the move, and that's the way you should be playing this into the schedule out.
Yeah, and I think to your point, some of it was out of necessity, and I guess my only frustration is that we wish we had seen this maybe a little earlier in the season. And
not maybe.
to be fair to Mike, giving up on the season 2 games in, that's really hard for a head coach to do. But based on the expectations we had, and I know Mike had for this team, your season was over after your second game in week 1. Like it was done. And we're going to start to see it. And I do actually have a surprising amount of optimism heading into the final stretch of the schedule, these final 6 games. And that probably surprises some people, but I have my reasons for it. I think, if you have, a last year guy who's still busting his tail in practice and doing everything the right way, showing up early for workouts and just doing everything that you would expect out of someone who hopes to be in the NFL next year, of course you don't bench them for a younger guy. You keep playing them. But if you have another guy who's an older guy and, maybe he's showing up right at 6 a.m. when you're due at 6 a.m. or, you look at the game tape and he's just not doing what he needs to do. Yeah, start getting those guys on the bench. Unfortunately, yeah, you might hurt the culture a little bit this year, but if those younger guys step up, then you're helping it moving forward. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I also don't even know, like, not to be super, super negative here, which is, I guess, what I'm about to do, but I don't even know. I mean, how much culture, matters at this point. You're
Yeah,
just kind of like
that's
trying
fair.
to get through and trying to get, on and get to a point where you can just get to December and hold on to as much of the signing classes as is physically possible. So, all right, I want to talk about Duke a little bit. Harlan, that's a good endpoint for that side. Richie, right before we talk about Duke, can you give Roback some love, and then we'll break down the Duke Blue Devils a little bit?
Yeah, we just want to shout out Roback, RHOBACK.com. I'm actually wearing the Hesse Performance hoodie right now. It's so comfortable. This is not a Florida State one specifically, but even though they have some elite Florida State gear, you don't have to go just with the Florida State gear. But as you can see on the screen right now, the Florida State gear they have is truly phenomenal. Just because your team sucks on Saturdays doesn't mean that your game day fit has to suck, because it will truly be elite if you are wearing anything Rowback, whether it be their polos, hoodies, joggers, even the non-team licensed gear. Again, go to rowback.com, RHOBACK.com. Use code DFNS20 for 20% off any first-time purchase. Again, DFNS20 for any first-time purchase. I promise you, once you buy one, you will continue to be a repeat customer. I was a customer well before they decided to partner with this program, and I'm glad I did, and I'm extremely excited that they chose to partner with us.
Yeah, their stuff is elite. I can't wait to, dude. It was like 70 degrees out today, and my wife put the kids in like tracksuits, and I was like,
Perfect hoodie
you didn't
weather.
really need to do that. But I actually stepped outside to grab some to pull the trash cans in, and she was like, and I was like, it's not really that cold out, and Bryant's wearing like a Adidas tracksuit, and she's like, yeah, I kind of went a little overboard on that, but he'll be okay. Kids are resilient, so. But yes, I'm coming up for the North Carolina game in a couple of weeks, and I cannot wait to take that quarter zip that I'm very fond of and wear that up there. So, all right, Duke 5-1, the fakest 5-1 team of all time. Maybe,
Yeah,
I don't know. They
yeah.
beat Elon 26-3. They barely slid by Northwestern in double overtime. Beat UConn by 5. Beat 2-5 Middle Tennessee State, which I stayed up late and watched the Middle Tennessee State against Kennesaw State game last night. 2-5 Middle Tennessee State. They actually did win 45-17. They beat North Carolina by a point, came back to win there, and then they lost last week to Georgia Tech 24-14. I don't think this is a very good team. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to, we're 1-5. I know we're not good. I think Duke is maybe the fakest good team that exists. If you take away their 45-17 game, they basically have which again, you can't. They beat Middle Tennessee State 45-17. I'm not taking that away. But if you take that away, I want to say that they've given up about as many points as they've scored. Right now, they're scoring about 26 points a game. They're giving up about 17 points a game. I do think Manny Diaz does a pretty good job defensively, and so I'm not trying to take too much away from their defense, which is giving up less than 20 points a game. They may do that again this week with how inept our offense is. But when you're playing Elon, Northwestern, UConn, I don't know, Middle Tennessee State, that helps your average a ton. Whereas Florida State hasn't been good, but they've played good offenses. Georgia Tech, Clemson, Memphis, SMU. Like there's definitely a difference. If you give Duke Florida State's schedule, maybe they're 2-3, 2-4, I guess, right? I would struggle to see Duke getting to 3-3. Obviously, they lost to Georgia Tech by more than we did, not to play the transitive property too much, but they lost to Georgia Tech by, a touchdown more than we did. And I would have a hard time thinking that Florida State against Elon, UConn, Middle Tennessee wouldn't at least be 3-3 right now. Maybe 4-2 if you can sneak out a win against Northwestern or North Carolina. So I think that the teams, it's hard to, it's hard in week 1 or 2 to really know what teams are. It's hard with this Duke team to really know what they are too. You go out and you play who's on your schedule at the end of the day, but I don't think this is a world-beating Duke team. This isn't a Duke team that's 4-2 in the conference or something, and that's how they have their 6 wins. They're 4-2 against really bad competition, and then they've split in conference. They barely beat a North Carolina team that got blown out by James Madison, and then they kind of got dominated by Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech having a quarterback go out in that game, and so weirdly enough, I do have some confidence that the Noles could get this done. Now, obviously, they have to take care of business on their own, but Duke is certainly one of the teams that Florida State should find a way to win against when you look at the rest of the schedule.
And TJ, I would make an argument that if Florida State had played Duke's schedule, there's a decent chance they're 6-0, 5-1, 4-2 at worst case scenario. The way Florida State's schedule set up this year, you played a Georgia Tech team on another continent in just a weird game that you really had a chance to win, that you should have won, and you didn't. And then you had a letdown game the week before, the week after, and things have just fallen to pieces since then. But if you start off the way Duke started off with that schedule, you just start stacking wins and you're building confidence. And you would not have played a single team more talented than you. And I think if you were, again, playing Duke's schedule and played Georgia Tech at the same time that Duke played them, you probably beat them. So the schedule does matter. It doesn't change the national narrative. And I get that. It won't make the fan base feel any better by me saying this. But to your point, I'm not saying Florida State is some great team. I'm just saying Duke has serious fraudulent issues right now, to where I think Florida State has a chance to go out and prove that Duke actually is a very fraudulent team. Florida State will play North Carolina. I think they could beat North Carolina. That's one of the few teams left on the schedule I think they could beat. But just looking at who they've played, 5-1 looks nice, but why aren't they ranked? If you're 5-1 in a Power Four conference, you should be ranked. Well, the pollsters look at their schedule, they look at who they played, they look at the scores, they look at the games to see what's happened, and there's a reason they're not even in the top, 30 if you look at others receiving votes at this point. So I do think the schedule matters, and for them to be, again, I haven't checked today, but only a 3-point favorite as a 5-1 team over a 1-5 team with a home night game. Not a lot of people actually believe in Duke, and this might get clipped, and I might look like a fool come Saturday morning, but I'm just not impressed with this Duke team, especially this Duke offense. Malik Murphy, I'm not impressed with him at all, with around a 50% completion percentage on the season and not much of a running threat. This Duke team is, to me, again, one word, fraudulent.
Remind me after the show to tell you guys a funny story about that word fraudulent. And but I agree. I think that's a good one. Harlan, don't let me forget that. I don't want to say it on here, but it is funny. Outside of, I've got him at 60% for the season. If you actually look at the games and you kind of eliminate the Elons and the games where he just kind of ran it up, he's been closer to 50%. In other games. It was 44% against North Carolina, 61% against Northwestern, 58% against Georgia Tech. A good touchdown to interception ratio. He's 14 touchdowns to 5 picks, so he's throwing about a pick a game. So maybe that's an opportunity for Florida State to steal a possession. This should be the best defense he's seen so far. And so, can you maybe grab a couple, right? He's had an interception in every game except for UNC. And again, James Madison put 60 plus on UNC's defense. And so, I think you've got an opportunity there. Star Thomas, their leading running back, has a little over 550 yards. He's averaging just under 5 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns. Nothing spectacular there. Their wide receivers, Jordan Moore and Eli Pancol, have just over 50 catches, almost 750 yards between the two of them, 8 touchdowns. Again, Murphy has thrown 14 touchdowns, so he's certainly a little more capable than what our quarterback play has been so far this year. But again, not lighting it up, and I would think DJ would have 14 touchdowns against again, your Elons and your Northwesterns and teams like that. So I would tend to think that their offense is pretty pedestrian. In fact, they've rushed, Richie. This was an interesting stat. They've rushed for 787 yards. They've given up 1,111. So, they've literally given up more than 320 yards more on the ground than they've rushed for themselves. And that's pretty crazy to think about, because usually the team that wins the rushing battle wins the game. They have given up more than 300, a quarter of their yards more than they've actually rushed for themselves. You want another fun one? They're averaging 26 minutes worth of time of possession on the year. They don't even hold the ball more. They are just playing awful competition. Want another fun one? I'll keep throwing you the stats. 28.75 on third down percentage. They are completing less than, and so they get a break this week because they get to play Adam Fuller. But they are getting less than 3 first downs every time they face a third and 3 out of 10 every time they get to a third down, right? Less than 30%. Opponents, again, 29.29. So pretty similar there. The opponent's actually slightly better on third down. But yeah, their third down. Imagine, Richie, if I told you that Florida State, before the year started, before you knew what our record was going to be, hey, we're going to be less than 30% on third down. You were probably said like, that ain't good. We probably aren't going to be 6-0 like we thought. We probably aren't going to be 5-1 like we were hoping for. They are 5-1, and they don't get it even 3 times every 10 times they have a third down. They're horrible on third downs. Again, they get Adam Fuller this week. To me, that's not to steal from Peyton, but Peyton calls it like if they get less than 30% this weekend on third down, we will win the game. Like that's just how things go. But imagine being 5-1 and not even having a 30% third down completion. Like the national average is like 50, right? Like you're just usually about halfway on it. And so I think that again, they're fairly fraudulent when it comes to just looking at the box scores, just looking at the stats. They're playing really bad teams. They haven't had a lot of pressure on them because of who they've played, and they've taken care of business. They've won 5 of the 6 games. That's a good. I mean, shoot, if they can win 2 or 3 more games, that's a great year for Duke. I think they're going to get exposed a little bit in the second half based on who they have to play. They got to play us. They got to play Miami. They got to play other tough opponents. But 28.75 on third down percentage, less than half. Again, 26 minutes time possession average on the year, and like over 300 yards less on the ground than what their opponents have had. And somehow they've still found their way to a 5-1 win. Maybe that's just opportunistic. Maybe I'm a hater and they are just the most opportunistic team of all time. I just don't think they're very good. I don't think they've played anybody that's very good. That's not me telling you Florida State's good, obviously, but they're pretty lucky to be 5-1 at this point. And it all has to do with the schedule.
Yeah. And I think that's where you have to leave it at. They don't do anything particularly well, right? They have the record. Your record is what you are. And, I typically would agree with that almost 98% of the time. I don't think that holds true for Duke. And again, this might get clipped, and that's fine if it does, because this is not a great Florida State team. But Duke, their record does not reflect the quality of football team they are for a Power 5 football team. I think they're probably an average football team if you include all conferences. If you just look at the Power 4, I know I just said Power 5, but if you just look at the Power 4, they are a bottom of the barrel team. And, there's not many Power 4 teams that if they were to play Duke today, that I would feel confident saying Duke would beat them. And, that's just kind of my stance on where they are right now. And we'll see Friday night, but I have a really good feeling which way I'm leaning towards right now.
Yeah, this is the get right game for Florida State. Again, this is a Duke team that's given up over 1,100 yards on the ground in their 6 games. That is just a shade under 200 yards a game. You've played Elon and Northwestern and UNC, and again, Georgia Tech's a good rushing team, so we'll kind of give them that. But Mississippi, not Mississippi State, Middle Tennessee State. And you've given up like almost 200, like 180 plus yards on the ground a game. I'm not telling you if Florida State can crack the 100 mark, but you would hope they could. Like if Florida State can't get 100 yards rushing in this game, I know they probably will against Charleston Southern. If they can't get 100 yards on the ground in this game, like what are we doing? Like just pack it, just pack in the rest of the year. This team, I don't even want to look up the game by game stats for their opponents because that probably feels like it would just depress me because I don't want to see like what Elon ran for and I don't want to see what some of these other teams ran for. But I am a masochist, so I'm saying that, but I am definitely going to look it up. But it would hurt my feelings if we didn't get to, what did I just say? 100 yards rushing. If you can't get 100 in this game, using Brock 5 or 6 times, running with Toafili, I would be pretty depressed at this point. So I think that's all I have on Duke. I just don't have that much more. They're not a great team. Florida State is, Florida State's not a great team. I get that. If Florida State can't find a way in this one, we make a big deal about the sod game, this, that, and the other, the tradition and all this other stuff. At the end of the day, you got to go out and win this game. Like, this is an unacceptable loss. I mean, I think Memphis is more of an acceptable loss than this Duke team is. So I don't know, with that 1,100 yards rushing that they've given up, Elon had negative 30. So if you take that out, they're giving up, for the other opponents that they've played, they're giving up over 200 yards a game rushing to, again, Northwestern, Middle Tennessee State, Georgia Tech, North Carolina. This needs to be a game that you go out and you really do try and get that running game going. Because if you don't in this one, it's essentially Charleston Southern and that's it. So any other big picture thoughts on Duke?
No, not really. We'll get into it in our predictions after we do our pick six, but I think that pretty much covers it, TJ.
So let's do a pick six. Let's give BetUS a little bit of love. Make sure that if you are betting this year, you are using our friends over at BetUS. You can use the code YouTube150, YouTube150 to get a 150% deposit match if you're going to bet on any of these games, or if you're going to bet on Thursday Night Football, the NFL, table tennis at 2 a.m. It doesn't matter. You get that bonus on your first deposit. Your next two are up to 125% bonus. That is good for up to $2,000 on those three deposits. We appreciate BetUS for their support, all that they've done for our channel, and we look forward to continuing to partner with them. Make sure that if you're betting, it is with BetUS. Yeah, just looked it up real quick. UConn over 180 rushing yards. Middle Tennessee State had 168, and then North Carolina and Georgia Tech had even more. So yeah, like everybody has run on them except for Elon. It's time for us to get the running game going. So, all right, Miami this opened up at 3. It's been bet up to 4.5. Miami's a 4.5 point favorite at Louisville. What are your thoughts on this one?
When you get the points, take them. It's very tempting right now to take Louisville money line. Cam Ward has proven to be everything that Miami was hoping they would get out of the transfer portal. Obviously, turnovers are still a bit of an issue for him, but not to the point where it's costing his team games. But I'm going to take Louisville here. I think 4.5 is too much. I think Miami does win the game, but I think it's a close one like it was when Miami went up to Cal. So give me Louisville with the 4.5 points.
So I think I like Miami here, and maybe I'm just trying to reverse engineer a jinx or something, but I think that, maybe Louisville got caught looking ahead a little bit, but they got dominated. They got bullied by Virginia last week, and so I just worry about their trenches being able to hold up. I also think that Miami, like most good teams do this, right? Most good teams do play down to competition, and Miami did that a couple of times with Virginia Tech and Cal, and so I don't think Miami is a national championship competitor this year, but I do think they're a really good team that's going to the playoff, and I think they'll get up for this. I think the fact that this is the narrative around them has been creative, like, oh, they're not as good as you thought they were. I think that they will come out and kind of take this game a little bit more seriously. I think this is the hardest game they have left. And so because of that, I mean, I think, it will be the closest spread they have left. And so because of that, I think Miami plays well and wins it by like 10 or 14. I agree. Cam's going to throw a pick or two, and then he's going to make like 5 plays that just make you say, holy crap, he could be in New York for the Heisman. So yeah, he'll probably continue to have mistakes, and they'll probably just live with it. They'll let him Brett Favre it, throw 2 picks, great, whatever, go get 4 touchdowns, and we're fine with it. So I think Miami wins here and wins probably going away. I'd love to be wrong there. Oklahoma State, 9.5 point favorites at BYU. I'll go first on this one. I think BYU steamrolls them. I think BYU is playing incredibly well. They will eventually have a letdown game. I looked at some stats today. Oklahoma State so Colorado plays going somewhere with this, but Colorado plays Arizona, Cincinnati, Utah, Kansas, somebody else that I'm forgetting, and then Oklahoma State at the end of the year. Oh, they're a bigger favorite over Oklahoma State than anyone else for the rest of the season. Texas Tech is the last one. They're a bigger favorite over Oklahoma State than anyone else that Colorado plays. And I'm not telling you that Colorado's a great team, a bad team, whatever. I just think that BYU is in for a letdown game. It's not this week. I think they beat Oklahoma State by it could be 20. So give me the favorite here too.
Yeah. So, spoke a little bit. Oklahoma State is actually 9.5 dogs. But yeah, I agree. BYU, the thing about BYU that is always tough is, that roster is always loaded with a bunch of 24, 25, 26-year-olds because of the mission trips they have to take. And they're just grown men. So even if they're not as physically talented, they are more mentally mature and physically mature. And I agree. I think BYU covers this 9.5. I'm not going to say easily, but I do think they cover it, especially at home.
Auburn this opened up at 7. This was a weird one. Auburn was a 7-point dog to Missouri. Now it's been bet down to 4.5. And it has kind of stayed there pretty steady all week at about 4.5. It was 4.5 Monday quickly after opening at 7.5. I actually, so what would that tell you? Maybe go with Auburn because that's the way the money's going. I'm going to go with Missouri. I think Missouri at home wins by more than 4.5. I just don't trust Auburn's offense at all. Missouri's offense certainly has been terrible this year and hasn't figured anything out. I think that they're more likely to win by a touchdown. So give me Missouri.
Yeah, I hate to agree so much, but I think Mizzou is just going to. I think they've had a disappointing season thus far, based on what their expectations were heading into the year. But I've not been impressed with Auburn at all, and I think Missouri covers the spread. I would take them up to 6.5, honestly.
What's next? Alabama's a 3-point favorite at Tennessee. Man, I'd really like to see Tennessee win this. They've been kind of a fun team to cheer for. Thank them very much for their service last week. But yeah, I think Bama wins this, probably going away. Tennessee should have lost to Florida. If Florida's coach was anybody but Billy Napier, Florida wins that game. It's hard for me to think that Tennessee could struggle with Arkansas and Florida, and I understand Alabama's struggle so far this year. It's hard for me to think that Bama's athletes can't go into Tennessee and win after Florida's athletes essentially did, but just have a bad coach that cost them the game, and after Arkansas beat Tennessee too. I like Bama to cover the 3 here. I'd love to be wrong about that just because I think it'd be kind of fun to see the underdog win at home and 100,000 people go crazy and storm the field and stuff. But I like Tennessee, or I like Bama to cover the 3 and maybe even win by 7 or 10.
I hate that we agree again, but I will disagree with you. I think Bama wins by more than 7 or 10. That's
not disagreeing.
This is my lock of the week. I think Bama goes in to Neyland and just destroys them. The last time they were there, I think it was the last time they were there, is when they ripped up the goalpost like Vanderbilt did, took it down and threw it in the river. That's not happening. I think Bama is a pissed off team right now. I think DeBoer is slowly learning lessons in big boy football. Not that Washington isn't, but Bama is just a completely different story. I'd take Bama. The -3 to me, it's the lock of the year to this point, in my opinion. Bama's going to cover that. I have no doubt.
Notre Dame 11.5 at Georgia Tech. I'll let you go. I feel like I keep taking the first, so I'll let you take this one.
I'm actually taking Georgia Tech here. Granted, you talk about Bobby Dodd Stadium. It's not exactly the toughest environment in the world.
Mercedes-Benz. It's at Mercedes-Benz this weekend.
Oh, this one's at Mercedes-Benz. Okay. Yep. I'm still going Georgia Tech. If we're just looking at the spread itself, maybe it's just me being a Florida State fan, being scarred by seeing what my team has done in Atlanta, whether we're playing at Bobby Dodd, at Mercedes-Benz, against, it doesn't matter. Name the school, Georgia Tech, Alabama, Houston. I'm just scarred. Being on the road at Atlanta scares me. I think Notre Dame wins, but I think Georgia Tech covers.
As long as Haynes King plays, I think Georgia Tech covers. There's some injury concerns with their quarterback. If he doesn't play, I think Notre Dame wins going away. I don't think that'll be the spread. If it's confirmed that he's out. So if Georgia Tech plays Haynes King, I think they cover. If he doesn't play, I think Notre Dame, does whatever they want and wins huge. So that's my caveat there. I like Georgia Tech to cover if their quarterback plays. Maybe that's a pretty easy caveat to put in. This is a fun one. Texas is a 5-point favorite against UGA. I think Texas is the better team. I'm just going to be very fair and tell you that I think Texas is the better team. I think that I've said this a couple of times to different people. I think the con of the century is Kirby Smart convincing maybe one of the most talented teams of all time that they were underdogs somehow and that they should have been like 7-5 and nobody believed in them. And then they go out and never lose a game. And so, like, yeah, I think that Kirby relishes the underdog role. So I think UGA actually wins this thing outright. I think they're playing worse. I think Texas is the better team. I think Kirby as an underdog is incredibly scary. And so, yeah, I like Georgia to win the game.
I hate that we're agreeing again, but I'm going to agree with you here, and I think the roles are kind of reversed, even though Texas was not involved. I remember that 2007 Florida State Alabama game, and I think Georgia was playing. No, it was the year after 2008. Georgia was playing Alabama, and Georgia was having the blackout, and everyone thought Georgia was just going to roll Nick Saban and the Tide, right? And then Georgia came out and just dominated the game from start to finish. I think that's what we're going to see, to your point, TJ, about Kirby Smart being such an elite motivator, playing that underdog role. Nobody thought they were going to lose that national championship game, but he somehow convinced his team they were going to lose it. I would take Kirby Smart over Steve Sarkisian any day of the week. I think the talent is probably equal. I think Georgia probably is slightly more talented. I think there's an aura around Texas where a lot of people just want to say, yeah, this is Texas's game to win. I would not be surprised if Georgia not only covered the spread, not only won by the money line, but won this game by 2 or 3 touchdowns. I'm taking Georgia straight up.
Whew, I don't know about 2 or 3, but I do think they win. And I guess it wouldn't surprise me if they kind of won going away because Georgia, as an underdog, is, again, incredibly scary. So, all right, let's pick ours. Again, appreciate BetUS for their support there. What, Harlan, you got a score on this one? And then, Richie, what do you think happens? And I'll give mine and we'll get out. 27-17. Harlan hasn't picked us, I think, since Boston College. 27-17. Harlan says Florida State wins. Richie, what you got?
So this has been an emotional week for those of you who have listened to our last show. In what I'll say at the close here, but the very first Florida State game I ever went to was in 1995 when Florida State hosted Duke at Camping World Stadium. Back then it was the Citrus Bowl. And it was the first game my dad took me to. So Friday is the 19th when the game is being played. My dad's birthday is the 21st. This is a completely emotional pick. Do not bet based on what I'm about to say, but I think Florida State is going to win. I truly do think they are the better team, so it's not entirely on emotion. But I will say Florida State 26, Duke 16.
Yeah, I'll say something. I like that 26. A lot of field goals in there, right? Yeah, I like Florida State to figure out a way to win this game too. Friday nights are weird in conference. We think about all the weeknight games we've played, and they usually get weird, whether that's a 14-0 at BC, whether that's a weird comeback against Louisville, whether that's just whatever. They never go the way you think they would. They're always a little bit goofy.
Clemson on a Friday a few years ago.
Yeah. Conference games are weird on weeknights. Short travel, short rest, weird practice week. I think it's low scoring too. Yeah, like Florida State 23-17 would probably be my closest guess. So we cover the spread, we win the game, 23-17 Noles. So season high for points. And I think we do rush for over 100 yards. So Richie, shout outs and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, again, if you listen to last week's show, I know it was very emotional at the end. And we had my friend Justin's memorial service today. It was a beautiful service, beautiful message. And what I loved was afterwards, close to 20 of us that have all known each other since high school went out together and spent literally, 3-4 hours out just hanging out, reminiscing. And it's just a reminder that, if never make an excuse not to hang out with a loved one. Find a reason to hang out with a loved one because it's so important. And, tonight was literally, the service was one of the hardest things I've gone through. But afterwards, being with all my friends was one of the, best evenings I've had in my life in a long time. So find reasons to spend time with your loved ones.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to follow up on that. Yeah, I think if there's anything that life and some of these storms and stuff teach you, like I don't know if I mentioned this the other day or not, but one of the houses in our neighborhood, a tree literally went down to the foundation, and 6 houses down from me could have been us, right? So, fortunately nobody was in that house, nobody was hurt. Insurance takes care of a lot of stuff, but insurance certainly can't take care of people's lives and families and stuff like that. So certainly we rant and rave about football and a bunch of BS that doesn't really matter, but there's a lot more important things out there. So we're praying for you, Richie, and appreciate everybody that tuned in tonight. Tell somebody that you know that you love them. You may have to hug somebody extra tight if we have to bring Sod back, or if we aren't even able the opportunity to bring Sod back on Saturday. But appreciate you guys a ton for tuning in. We will talk to you soon. We'll certainly, depending on how I feel on Friday night, maybe I'll do a recap quickly and we'll go from there. But appreciate you guys for tuning in. As always, go Noles.